Hello, everybody, and welcome to ABM Answered, the quickfire Demand Gen and ABM video series, or at least that's what we aim for. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Dan Smith, a B2B Demand Gen strategist with over 14 years experience in the field, which sounds like a crazy amount of time, but also if I think about it, time is just flying, and I'm not far behind you there, Dan, but you're definitely more experienced than me. A question I always like to ask is, how did you end up in B2B marketing? And perhaps maybe you can give the audience a bit of background on you and what you've been up to in those 14 years.
Yeah, great question. And looking forward to the session, Sam, and thanks for having me on. So my background, I came from a marketing degree. I was studying business studies and finished with my final year dissertation, which was looking at kind of the effectiveness of marketing. So I always knew that I wanted to get into the marketing field. So I did some SEO copywriting and then managed to find a role which was at a startup company, Inbox Insight, and joined as employee number 4. And we scaled the business up quite quickly. And over that 14-year period, I've run teams across client services, digital media, and the journey with the business has really just given me the kind of the grounding and the knowledge of the B2B demand generation space. So worked on hundreds and thousands of different campaign plans, and it's been interesting to see different shifts in the market, but it's always been varied, and not any one campaign has been the same, so that's kept it always very interesting for me, and that's why I just really enjoy working in the B2B demand generation space.
Awesome. And I imagine if you're very familiar, well, I'm very familiar with Inbox Insight, as you know, but as employee number 4, I'm sure you've had to wear many different hats. So it probably makes you a very versatile marketer, which I think is underrated. Sure. So to run you and the viewers again through the rules, Dan in this case will be given a set of questions to respond to, all about account-based marketing and demand gen. The questions have come from or been adapted based on the data we collected at Mixed Reality Rims, where we've had over 1,000 marketers go through and state what their biggest struggles are with ABM at the moment. But as I like to say now, Dan, because we're huge, we're big time, we're taking on Joe Rogan, we started to include previous guests' questions as well. So Dan, are you ready for question 1?
I'm ready, yeah. Hit me, Sam, yeah.
Cool. So question 1 is finding innovative ways to break through the noise. And this is kind of a problem and challenge that's come up with a lot of different marketers. So I can't specifically reference one, but how would you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the emergence of B2B intent data. I think, it's here to stay, and it's something that every publisher, every marketer is probably utilizing as one opportunity, especially when you're looking at that from an ABM perspective. So it might not be out of the ordinary, and it might not be as innovative, but I think that it can really sort of help you understand an account's research habits, which, if you're developing an ABM strategy, it's identifying the accounts that are going to be most relevant for your organization or that are potentially in market. So you're kind of already speeding up that cycle, or identifying people that are potentially already researching topics or solutions that fit your company. That's worked for me in the past when we've been faced with ABM challenges. So looking at kind of best fit accounts on behalf of clients. So I can give you a couple of examples if that'll help, just to kind of put some context on that.
Sure.
So I was working with a client last year, and that was an ABM driven campaign launch. It was a kind of 9 to 12 month program. But one of the first tasks for me was to receive a target account list that the company had drawn up. And actually the size of that list was around 300 organizations. What I had to do was actually come up with a recommendation for a top 25. So it's quite a deep dive into, you've got your account list, but who out of those 300 organizations are your best fit accounts, and who should you be going after? So the other piece of the puzzle, which I didn't have at the time, was any information around pipeline metrics or opportunity stages of those 300 accounts. So I developed a list of intent keywords, which were aligned to the company's products and services, and ran the account list through a series of sort of tests, if you like, to identify which of the accounts were most interested in the relevant topics that I pinpointed. The long and short of it was, after running the analysis, we identified 25 accounts and presented those back to the client. And it transpired that 3 out of those 25 accounts had actually recently turned into closed won accounts. So automatically, it justified the exercise. You know, we could see that the data was taking us down the path of identifying the best fit accounts, which justified my role in the process, but it also gave the client a lot of faith that the B2B intent data that we're overlaying on top of the account list that they provided was exactly the right approach. So that was one example. And similarly, it doesn't always have to be a target account list. It can be an ICP definition. So another client I was working with, they help large retailers with their e-commerce platforms and their e-commerce conversions. So again, we ran a similar kind of intent analysis on top of that ICP definition. And the top account in terms of the average score of that intent was one account that was about a week away from signing a large contract with the business. And it had been on their radar for around 6 months. So again, it's those two kind of use case stories that always stick in my mind, that you can tap into an account list or an ICP definition, put your intent data over the top of it, and already you're starting to accelerate your ABM journey and you're identifying the accounts which are the most relevant. So those are kind of two working examples from last year that I found super interesting, and it just justifies the data and the value that exists within it.
You must have looked like the good Lord to these people. How you predicted that.
It's surfacing, I think, you know, the predictive buying behavior of an account. And I think that's something that any B2B marketer can use data to leverage and identify those best fit accounts. So yeah, it was a bit of wizardry. I was very happy with the results, but the methodology is absolutely sound. And I think if you've got a target account list, I think digging deeper into that and looking at, you know, these are my best fit accounts from a purely firmographic perspective, but what are they actually interested in right now? And that's the level that you need to get to. And then you can start marketing and tailoring your campaigns to those businesses.
So I have so many follow-on questions, but I'm conscious of time. But we'll keep it kind of short. I'm going to first, how long does this process often take? So you got given a list of 300. How long did it take you to get down to 25 and conduct all that research?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big challenges from the client side was actually drawing up that list of 300 accounts, because you can, in that first example, because you want to cast the net quite wide and you don't have the feeling of maybe FOMO. You don't want to miss out on an account that that you potentially could sell to, that could bring a big contract into your business. So a lot of it was just asking them, you know, can you give us accounts that you would love to work with? And obviously that net was quite big with the 300 organizations. The actual process of drawing up the intent topics was relatively quick. You know, we can lean on, you can use AI to assess certain topics. You can dig deeper into products. You can use case studies. You can use, collateral to identify the keywords. And then it's simply just a case of looking at 3-month look back data, 6-month look back data, or 12-month look back data. And then you can start to kind of assess how recent is that intent data, and what are some of the kind of trends coming from that. So yeah, it was a relatively quick process once we've been given the target account list to then draw up the keywords, make them as relevant to the solutions that the client was working with, and then run the analysis based on those kind of time period look backs.
Okay, understood. The last thing I'll say, and then we really must move on. I'm going to play devil's advocate to this. Part of people, like a lot of people I speak to, despise intent data, or they they question its validity, its reliability. Yet we have other marketers just like you, who you've clearly found value in it. And I'd argue, because you've given 2 examples, and I'm sure you have many more, this isn't a fluke, right? You haven't just got lucky once, you've got lucky twice, or you're good at what you do. So therefore, I am inclined to think, or let's just go down this path. and assume most marketers that use intent data use it wrong. Where do you think, just off the top of your head, potentially, maybe you don't have an answer to this, where do most marketers go wrong with like leveraging intent data? Do they not go deep enough? Do they go too broad? Do they not give it long enough to find the right search terms?
Yeah, I think drawing up relevant topics. So really honing in on the keywords that are going to produce the best results. So as a good example, Inbox Insight, when I was helping with the marketing to bring new customers into the business, we would look at demand generation consulting as a keyword, because I think that demonstrates someone's need to have someone to come into the business and understand what they're doing currently and advise on what they're doing in the future. So that in itself, you could just look at demand generation as a keyword, but by putting the consultancy at the end of it, that can really help you narrow down some element of buying behavior, I guess. So keyword selection might be one starting point to really make sure you've picked the best topics for your products or services, and that would be the starting point. I think there's the recency of that intent data. So it's okay looking at a current snapshot, but what you also need to do is look back at common trends over not just sort of the last 90 days, but is that a common trend over 180 days or 365 days? Because the longer you can pin that trend back and see the consistency in that research, then that is the value of the intent data. So you could fluke it if you just go back 30 or 90 days, but if you go back even further and you can start to understand, okay, this account has really been interested in that topic or this cluster of topics over a very, very long period of time. Buying decisions don't happen overnight. So there's got to be a consistent trend. Taking the data back as long as you can and then identifying some of those key trends is really important. So that's potentially taking the intent data and really digging into it over a longer period of time is probably what I would say to that question.
I mean, I could keep going with as in like you could go too far to the point they've already made a decision. But then I guess if there's no signals in the last 30 days, but there's been signals for the previous 11 months, maybe they've made their decision or something. So as long as there's consistency, I guess that could work. Okay, so the two takeaways from there is you've got to be almost uncomfortably narrow. It's like you've got all this data, but like you've got to be super specific with what you're searching for, and also backdate it. It's also almost like hedging it over time hedging the risk over time. Okay, This is Dan. This is great. I'm sorry for sticking on that. We've definitely got a quick fire coming up. So the next question came in from, well, I'd say Katie O'Neill at Noetic. So Katie is a sales enablement specialist, and Matt Conway from TX1 Networks, who is running ABX at TX1. They asked, what is a simple way to explain to sales all the great work marketing has been doing without overcomplicating it? So how do you speak their language, I guess, Dan?
Yeah, great question. I think, sales and marketing alignment is crucial when you're looking at an ABM approach. And I'd say, I think as B2B marketers, generally we're just fascinated by data. And I think it's a key trait that anybody should have. So I think sales can be data driven, but I think when you're looking at explaining something or some of the good work that's happening on the marketing side is often data driven because we follow the numbers and we follow the trends. So I think our role as marketers is to bring meaning and context to a sales team to really just help give that context. So one thing that I've seen succeed in the past is demonstrating the value of the data that we've surfaced by providing that context. So a big win that I've seen was we had a large finance SaaS client who ended up booking a series of campaigns. And I did a similar approach. So I looked at that account's intent behavior over a period of time. I'm always going to come back to B2B intent data because it's just, I love the meaning that it can bring you. So that particular account was demonstrating an incredibly high average score for the intent topics that were relevant to us as a business. So that was before they spent money with us. So what I could do then was use that as a case study to say, we've closed this client. this is the data that I can show you before that interaction and before that purchase happened. So that can help you with the trust in the data. A salesperson can see that, they can see the value, because ultimately that's that's the result that they're looking for. They want to close more deals quicker. The revenue is the main driver, right? So I think if you can put that with clear storytelling and use a case study to back that up, then you start to develop sales champions who believe in the data and they want more of it in the future. And then it's that change in behavior or a change in mentality that can really, really help. And once you've got someone on board, then word of mouth will generally flood across different sales teams. So again, that's a really, really sort of important point, is the sales champions. You need to develop a few of those, and then that will kind of develop a culture within the sales team from there.
Is that a case of just buying them brownies or something, or saying, "Can I have 10 minutes to sit down?" Do you pick on the weakest, or like the outsider, the new starter? What? Any tips there?
No, I think if you can pinpoint it to, one account that's, it could be someone's closed one account or a lapsed account, or provide the value. So putting that into a sort of a real life environment and making that sing to that individual. It can be anyone in the team. It doesn't have to be a senior. It could be a junior. It could be a BDR. It could be anybody in the team. But as long as they see the value of the data that you surfaced as a marketer, then they'll take that away, and then word will spread, basically.
So you've got to sell to the sales team.
You've got to sell to the sales team, yeah, with a good story. They're out there every day, with good stories. They're backing it up with case studies. They're explaining why, a client should use their solution. What we're sort of selling is our solution for identifying new prospects. So sell to the salesperson.
All marketing titles should be renamed to internal sales or something.
Internal sales, yeah.
Right. Problem 3 came in from Sarab Sankey, or it's more of a question. He asked how Christina Jaramillo asked this as well, I remember. She asked, how or when is the right time, or what is the right time for an organization to adopt an ABM approach?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's probably a bit of external pressure. Everyone's doing ABM, so if you're not doing it, you kind of feel left out, maybe. But I'll quote. So Jimmy Carr was on Diary of a CEO, and I think he quoted some sort of Chinese proverb. So the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So if you're not already adopting an ABM strategy or an approach to campaigns, just do it now, experiment and see what happens. So you can do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fully fledged ABM strategy. It can be done on a campaign by campaign basis. But I think what I've found is that having a concrete methodology to account selection, if you're about to launch a campaign, it can really just help you unlock smaller pockets of data and more meaningful insights from those accounts. You can start to identify maybe opportunities for personalization and content creation. You can protect your budget a little bit more, so avoiding wastage or targeting less relevant or less active accounts. So there's a cost saving element to it. And at the end of it, you want to prove that your marketing has had the best impact possible. And a great way to do that is to always bring that back to what's happened at an account level. So if you can see your growth or engagement at an account level and pin that back to the accounts that you've selected at the very beginning, you can then develop a narrative to almost demonstrate the success of that campaign. And I think, going back to the previous point, an account selection process can really help your sales and marketing alignment. If both teams know who you're going after, then there's automatically a bit of a collaboration between those two teams, which is a great way to get you guys working together. So yeah, it creates that bridge. So yeah, I'd say experiment with it and try and adopt an account-led approach to a campaign. If you're not quite there ready for a fully fledged ABM strategy, try it on a campaign, because it's really important to test it out.
I think you're the first person to tie Jimmy Carr to ABM, which is superb. The second thing is You've also answered two questions there, which is brilliant. It's like kind of what are the first steps, and it starts with like mapping out who you're going to go after. And I think you make a lot of good points that ABM doesn't have to be expensive, and it can get going in small doses. To be honest, yeah, as long as the account value is right, like your customers and it matches up financially, the numbers work. I think you're right. You just got to get started and see if it works. We should
Yeah,
always be running experiments as marketers, I think.
yeah.
Right,
And
Dan. Oh, sorry. Yeah, carry on.
I was also just going to sort of chip in because I think ABM by its definition is account based. You're always looking at the organisation. There's kind of that human element. So there's also if you're not looking at an account, if you might have buyer personas. So people based marketing might be another way of running an ABM style approach. So if you know who you're speaking to and you know the challenges that they're facing and you know how your solution or your product can help them, it can explaining to that human who's ultimately making the decision at the end of it how it's going to make their job easier, how we're going to help you achieve your goals, your objectives, how you're going to look great in front of your boss because you've worked with us. All of those are kind of the people-based marketing approaches. So it doesn't always have to be an account level. You can go down the route of persona-led or people-based marketing, which is another kind of important point because B2B can learn a lot from B2C. And I think that's quite important to remember.
I totally agree with that. Dan, are you okay for time? We're on the last question.
All good. Yeah, fine.
Cool. Right. So the final question came in from Janelle Amos, Elevate Growth, and she asked, "What are the top 3 things you would prioritize today if you were building a marketing strategy from scratch?" And I'm going to guess lead account selection being one of them. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to ruin your thunder.
Yeah, I think I'll put it under targeting. So
Okay.
well thought out ICP definitions, market segments, towels. So I think those to start with can really just help shape how your marketing campaigns will run. And you can start to tailor your sort of channels and your content and your messaging around some of that kind of ICP definition or your targeting strategy. So you can kind of use the who, why, what, where framework. So who is it that I'm targeting? Why am I targeting them? What do they care about? And also where can I find them? I think that's quite a neat way to sort of pitch into the overarching targeting strategy behind the marketing campaign. So that would be definitely one. I think the other part is strong content. So what I found is market research and that type of peer-to-peer thought leadership can really work amazingly well because you're identifying challenges that other people in your industry are having. And it's a great way to fire up a faceless conversation with new prospects. Your brand's front of mind, you're the experts, and it gives you a really, really strong hero piece that you can use for brand awareness and lead generation. But for a marketing strategy, the longer term benefits of that over a year are that you can use it for repurposing on social channels. You can talk about the data that you've surfaced in virtual or in-person events. You can use statistics within your email outreach or your nurture sequences. So all of that can help you just take one piece of market research and extend the lifespan of that and use it in different ways. So I think if you've got a strong concept for market research at the beginning, and then you can run that throughout the rest of your marketing strategy, it can actually help pull some pieces of the puzzle together, use that research to your advantage. And then the last one, so you're looking for 3, right?
The triple threat.
Triple threat. Okay, so measurement framework. I think it's always important for you to understand what success looks like, and you can almost work backwards from that. If you're looking at appointment sets or opportunity metrics, how many leads do I need to go into my funnel and what's the likely conversion rate of those? So if you've got certain success measurements, you can then plan your media, you can plan your channels, your tactics, all backed from that sort of success framework. And it can really tailor your marketing strategy based on what you're looking for the outcome to be. So yeah, I'd say strong content, KPIs and measurement of success, and clear targeting are my top 3.
I feel like that's a solid top 3. So yeah. The I kind of, this is slightly off topic, but I kind of like, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I used like, I used to be a painter and decorator, and if it took me 5 days to paint a flat from start to finish, everyone thinks, oh, just painting is like it all. No, the first 3 days are the prepping, the
Prep.
rubbing down. That's basically research, the targeting that you're mentioning.
Yeah.
One day would be the actual painting, which I would argue, and your go to market strategy here is like thought leadership, which is totally reasonable. And then the final day is like the touch ups, like what have you missed, what have you done, like. And I think that last bit that you mentioned as well is super important, like the iterating. Otherwise, you're relying on a fluke. I've never just launched a campaign out of thin air and it's worked. Like it's always taken multiple iterations to get somewhere. So I think that's a really good three, and I think Janelle will be very, very happy with that answer.
Good.
The last thing, Dan, I will
Go
ask you is, do you have a question for our next guest, or a headache that you've experienced at some point to do with ABM?
Yeah, I guess one would be when you're looking at ABM strategy over a whole year. I guess personalization is such a key part of marketing now. So, what are some of the best or most effective methods of personalization when you're looking at an ABM strategy? That would be really interesting for me to surface. So, can you go, levels deeper than just simply tailored outreach, or how do you really connect with that person? So yeah, some theme on personalization, what's working, and what are the sort of opportunities of personalization in the future within B2B marketing?
I love the more creative questions. That's awesome. I'll ask that in the next interview. Dan, thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks very much, Sam. Appreciate it.